Well, this is exciting. We are launching a brand new podcast called At Home with the Hugheses. My name's Tim. You are?
Rachel.
We're married.
We are.
And we're excited to spend time, I guess, sharing our lives.
Being with each other.
Being with each
That's quite nice.
Well, it's like a bit of a date night.
This is not a date. This isn't even close to a date night. Just be under no illusions.
Okay, all right, well, there you go.
But we should actually name the elephant in the room.
Go on.
We've called it At Home with the Hugheses. Anyone of a grammatical persuasion, we've gone with Hugheses.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's not go there. Technically, it should be Hughes, but Hughes sounds better. Anyway, but the elephant in the room is that we're not at home.
Yes.
And that is because we came up with the title for this podcast about 5 seconds ago. And so we happen to be in the offices.
Yeah.
So please don't think that we're lying. Don't question our integrity. We will film probably future episodes or record. If you're listening to this will mean nothing to you. We're not at home.
No.
But we just thought that was quite a good way of summing up what it's all about.
And the vision for this podcast is for us to, I guess, share and reflect on life, marriage, parenting, leading a church, different experiences we've had over the years, things that we're thinking, pondering, and we want to try and be honest and vulnerable, real, raw, invite people into the mess and reality of leadership, ministry, life. And so that's what we want to do. So At Home with the Hugheses felt like a good way of...
Good summing up.
And I like the alliteration.
Yeah, I like that too.
So anyway,
it
there
flows.
we go.
As a songwriter, it scans well, doesn't
It does,
it?
it
I
does.
said, not me, I'm not the songwriter,
No.
obviously.
But,
that was very conclusive. No. No.
You did write 2 songs.
I have made a contribution over the years,
remember what 2 they
haven't I? No idea.
Living for Your Glory.
Yeah.
And Remember.
Good.
There you go, 2 songs.
Good.
But
Lovely.
Rach, how's your morning been?
Oh, actually, it's actually been a really stressful morning. I've arrived slightly fraught.
Mm-hmm.
We're recording this towards the tail end of the school holidays, summer holidays. And I genuinely actually really love the sort of summer holidays.
Mm-hmm.
Kids are off school, kind of off the treadmill a little bit of trying to get everything. We've got 5 children, we should say that. 5 children, 1 dog, 4 chickens and a rabbit.
Yeah.
We like just keeping things alive, basically. And yes, so slightly fraught morning. There were lots of logistics involved. You merrily skipped out the door, didn't you?
Yeah, whistling as I left.
Yeah, just before all the chaos kicked in. So I needed to get various children to different places. I needed to try and prepare for this. I didn't end up even washing my hair.
Well, I did wonder.
Yeah,
Smells a bit.
yeah. So I'm taking a deep breath.
How do you, when you have these mornings, which aren't...
a rarity.
Yeah. How do you shift gears into then meetings, leadership, decision-making, one-to-one, all the things that you do?
Oh, that's a good question, actually, isn't it?
you.
We're jumping straight in. I think probably there was a time where I would allow that sort of thing to then affect my mood and my state of mind and bring that into the office, like literally and metaphorically. And I feel like there would have been a time a few years ago where I would have leaked some of that emotion or that tensity that I was feeling. Tenseness? Tension, thank you. I'd have leaked it, I think, perhaps into my first meeting. Or you're nodding.
No,
You can't.
You'd leak it all over me.
Oh dear. Probably to a degree. So I think what I've tried to do now is literally take a breath, not squash it, because again, I think one of the things about parenting, leadership, etc., is that you are having to absorb a lot of toxic emotion from other people or and a lot of leadership, a lot of parenting is absorption. It's like you have to take on board the stuff that other people are carrying. And if you don't deal with it, it starts to sort of eat away. Well, anything toxic will sort of, start to eat away inside. So I'm not suggesting that you then squish it, leave it. But I think what I've recognized is I will then find a time to process that soon, not leave it for ages, but find a time to process it in a way that means I'm not just sort of leaking it out onto other people. I think it's being aware as well I think I could, when I'm feeling stressed and I've had to absorb a lot of stuff from either kids or church or whatever, I think I can go into control mode.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a very decisive yes. Or passive aggressive mode. And self-awareness, I think, is probably a key.
I think the other thing you're good at, I think we both do, and have learnt maybe as our family's got bigger and maybe the teams we lead have got bigger, is not catastrophizing things.
That's a
so,
good
for example,
one. That's our favourite word at the moment, isn't it?
You had a little. We spoke on the phone as you described your morning, and maybe a bit more colourfully than you shared there. Kids upset about this, or some are being clingy and blah blah blah. But actually, not overly blowing it out of proportion.
Yeah,
and realising that children, people you work with at times are going to bring and dump emotion. Or communicate things in a way that feels raw, and the danger is you panic about everything, or as I said, catastrophize, and then you just get in an absolute spin. And I think calming things down, as you said, a deep breath is a good way to operate. I think in the fullness of our lives, with all that we have going on, we've had to learn that. And are continuing to learn it. Anyway,
we've gone off script there, haven't we? We've sort of jumped ahead because we really wanted to spend this first episode bringing people up to speed in terms of who we are. How have we got here? How have we found ourselves sitting in this slightly
not quite
dilapidated,
our second home.
The office. 19 years into marriage, and a church.
Nearly.
No.
Nearly 19
next
year.
Yeah, there we go. That's the big one next year. So you can start saving your pennies for that one. How have we got here? So
we, in terms of, we've known each other all our lives.
We have.
Our parents were best friends, still are.
So your dad was the vicar of the church that our parents went to.
Yes.
My dad was the church warden, and so they were very, very close.
Yeah, so we grew up. We used to go on holiday together as a family.
I think we used to have baths together. Pre 5. I'm going to go with maybe 4, 3. What's inappropriate?
I guess a 28-year gap.
Yeah,
resume
the habit. Yeah.
But I was like best friends with your brother, and so we grew up together. But there wasn't probably quite chemistry, was there?
Well, not from you towards me. No. I was feeling lots of chemistry.
You actually asked me out when you were 12.
Well, technically I didn't. Our friend Tom asked you out on my behalf without actually my permission. I was quite mortified, but you did give a very definitive no at that point.
But then, as you said, came crawling back 20 years later. But
a bit longer than that, yeah. But
so we've grown up together.
But our lives look pretty different. So we were at the same church. Your dad was the vicar in High Wycombe. Love High Wycombe. And then you moved up to Birmingham, which is where we are now, although you obviously haven't been there for that full duration. Moved up to Birmingham, and our family stayed in touch because we were close, and we would sort of connect at various festivals in the summer, etc., family gatherings. And I still did harbour quite a relentless crush on you, it would be fair to say.
Although
I did also have lots of other
I wasn't the only. But your first snog was my younger brother.
That's true. That is true. Yes.
But anyway, so sorry, we digress.
You're still not over that, are you?
No, yeah.
Yeah, we were just practicing, to be honest. It wasn't romantic, which is terrible. Terrible to acknowledge, but we just decided, it was a fairly pragmatic decision as young teens that we should learn how to kiss. And I was very good friends with your younger brother, and we just thought, let's try.
I feel like you're dragging Pete down here.
Sorry.
As well, so. But anyway, so we went slightly our separate ways, didn't we?
We did.
Universities.
Yeah.
Maybe be fair to say.
Yes. How are you going to summarise this?
In terms of faith and, well, I think for me, I from a young age had quite a deep encounter with the Spirit. At a big conference called New Wine, and fell in love with Jesus and
not me at that point.
No, fell in love with music and worship, and would spend hours singing, worshipping, learning songs, and these doors began to open up to lead worship. After University at Sheffield, I ended up being a Soul Survivor as a worship leader, and then HTB as a worship pastor. So
you were very clear from a young age, weren't you, that A, you wanted to pursue Jesus, and you weren't going to compromise on that.
Yeah.
In lots of different respects, particularly in the area of sort of relationships and sex and everything like that. And secondly, that you felt called into church leadership, worship leading, and you were actually pretty clear on that from a young age, weren't you?
Yes.
I mean, you studied history, which is a bit random at university.
We
but
had 4 hours of lectures a week.
actually, you didn't even want to go to uni particularly, did you? But,
no, and my parents were really keen that I did.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that I did, because I think the danger would have been that I'd have just stayed within the comfort of church and actually having those years living, that uni life around a whole different kind of group of people was brilliant for me. Hard, but brilliant. And so I think it was pretty clear. And actually in our next podcast, we're going to be looking at this sense of calling.
Yeah, how you discern that.
How you invest in that and how you move forward in that. So we can look at that more. But I guess for you went on a bit more of an exploratory journey of faith, identity. Mm-hmm. Do you want to say?
I mean, I don't think I never stopped believing in God. I don't think there was ever a point. I don't think there's ever been a point where I've categorically thought there is no God.
Yeah.
Obviously, I've had doubts. But I think for me, in my teens, I became really, really insecure about the way that I looked, which is not an uncommon experience, particularly for teenage girls. But it was, for me, it was really intense. I had very strong feelings of hatred, really, and disgust towards the way that I looked, real insecurity. And I guess sort of objectively, I felt like I didn't meet the sort of the standard of beauty that was being just sort of shoved in our faces. I mean, obviously it's even more so now. And so I felt really insecure. And I think essentially those feelings of insecurity and hatred towards the way that I looked, they led me, I mean, as well as all the teenage hormones going on as well, they led me to make decisions, particularly in the area of sex and relationships, that just weren't compatible really with following Jesus. And so in a sense, I kind of parked my faith. I mean, I still went to church fairly regularly, particularly sort of leading up to university. I would still go to New Wine, Soul Survivor in the summer, and I would experience these encounters with God. I just loved worshiping, but very quickly, I guess the sort of the lure of the world kicked in as soon as I was home, back with all my school friends. And to be honest, the church youth group wasn't really happening in the same way as it had been. Maybe that's unfair. It was probably more to do with me. But
no, but I think for me, when I was growing up in Birmingham, the church had an amazing youth group.
Yeah.
And that was absolutely key in my faith, that I was around brilliant people who also were trying to follow Jesus. And you felt that, the community, you're holding each other to account. And again, I think for parents, it's hard, isn't it, where children, young people's ministries at churches are really battling at the moment. But as a parent, just getting children, young people in environments where there are other people their age who are also trying to be serious about their faith, I think is so key. Whether it's weekends away, festivals, massively valid, important investment. Yeah,
and maybe that was lacking a little bit for me. And then I headed off to university, and I kind of made this conscious/subconscious decision to leave my faith behind and just sort of chase after what I deemed to be that sort of quintessential student experience, which in my mind had nothing to do with getting a decent degree and everything to do with drinking a lot of alcohol and meeting a lot of guys. Yeah. Which I did. I committed to that goal and
was first in it, did you?
I mean, joking aside, in some ways, it was. There was a lot of fun in it, and I think again we have to be real about it. There's something enticing about the way that the world does things. That of course it was enticing, and there were some really fun times. But I think what I look back and recognize now as when I graduated from uni. And I think we'll talk in future episodes about those 20s, particularly in the area of calling. 'Cause I think the 20s often doesn't get talked about much. We talk a lot about student life in the church, but I think the 20s is a really, really key stage of life. Anyway, I digress. But I graduated and I just felt this sort of profound emptiness inside. I'd made lots of mistakes, made choices that had really been at the cost of my own sense of dignity and worth. And I knew that God was sort of calling me back. And I knew, it was like, I've described it this before, I knew the key to the door, if you like, but I was choosing to sort of ignore it. I knew the key to the door of life was following Jesus. But I just didn't want to give up what I thought would make me feel good, which was the affirmation that I received through, relationships with guys. But I felt this emptiness. I didn't know who I was anymore. I just lost that sense of who I was, lost any sense of direction. And I did at that point sort of say this prayer, this sort of snotty prayer, asking if I could come back. And we may touch on this a bit later, but in future episodes. But one of the key things for me was I was carrying so much shame at that point. So I knew God loved me, but because of all the stuff that I'd done, I just didn't think God would be able to use me. I thought that there would be these limitations. I thought that would impact the person that I might be able to marry, potentially. I thought that would impact the sorts of things that I might be able to do for God, that because of my choices, those would be limited and constrained. And what I've discovered is that God's grace is immense. And so I guess there was a number of twists and turns in my early 20s, but then I also ended up at Soul Survivor Church. I was working in TV. I'd done a degree in television and was determined to be a Blue Peter presenter. That didn't happen.
But you worked in production.
TV production,
We were in the same friendship group.
We were.
And in terms of how we got together, because you do slightly longer version.
Oh, I'm sure people want to hear the long version.
I'll do my more abbreviated version. But we were hanging out, and I think I felt very safe around you because of the history.
Which wasn't what I was aiming for at the time.
And I was traveling a lot. You were busy. Your hours were quite intense for the BBC.
What you're not saying is that there was a point where you were like the thing. Do you know what I mean? No, Rachel. No. Do you say no? You were.
Well, bottom line, I think I was terrified of women.
You were, and there was a lot of interest. Let's say that.
Yes. So
at the time.
But we would hang out a bit, and I felt very safe.
Yeah, because I wasn't one of the many girls. In theory, I wasn't one of the many girls that wanted to date you, but actually I was. But you just didn't know that.
And then my mum would be, and I think I'd be talking to my mum saying, because she was like, Tim, are you going to date anyone?
Yeah.
I think she was worried I'd sort of, just throw myself into work and not think about those sorts of things. And I'd say, I'd love to marry someone like Rachel. But I think maybe because you'd grown up, I don't know what in my head, I didn't think in that way.
Yes.
And then I started dating someone.
You did?
Your housemate.
Yeah. Who we love. Yeah.
But then I think I realised actually, that was great, but it didn't ultimately work out. And I realised actually, you were amazing, and I think that kind of what's interesting. It started from a sense of deep friendship, and then for me the emotions and the oh my goodness, actually Rachel's gorgeous, and I love hanging out with her, and she makes me laugh, and I just want to be in her presence. I want to be around her, thinking about all that kind of kicked in. And it's interesting. I think it happens in different ways.
Yeah,
Some
head
people,
and heart, isn't
head
it?
and heart. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And we started dating, and I think pretty quickly we knew this was it, didn't we?
Yeah, we
and I
did.
think it's been an amazing gift having that.
I should say though, we had come to the relationship from different places, and I remember you'd finally asked me out on a drink.
I was slow.
You were very slow, yeah. Which was because I was nearly set up with somebody else actually, and then a friend of ours.
Yeah.
Actually, B, our sister-in-law,
Yeah.
knew that you liked me.
Yeah.
And she was also my housemate at the time.
Basically, she intervened, didn't she?
She was like, Rach, don't go on this blind date. Like, don't go on this setup. Tim likes you.
Yeah.
And I do remember dancing around my bedroom at that point. But then it was
messy bedroom. I couldn't.
Yeah, it was very messy.
Your bedroom was.
But it was like a good 2 months later before you asked me out. And then we went out on this drink, and it was that, the cliche. They started like putting the chairs away around us because we were chatting and chatting and chatting. And you still hadn't kissed me at this point. And this was like totally new for me because the way that relationships had worked for me before, all that stuff happened way before any sort of commitment. And then you asked me to come for lunch at your house on Sunday.
Yeah.
Vividly remember that. And so I'm thinking, we're like 2 dates in now. Surely he's going to kiss me. And we're sat on the sofa, like sofas opposite each other. No physical contact whatsoever at this point. And I'm thinking he's read too many copies of I Kiss Dating Dubai or something. And then you said all these lovely things about me and said, would you be my girlfriend? And I said, oh, let me think about it for half a second. Yes. And then I'm thinking, right, he's going to stroll across that living room floor and give me a kiss. And the next thing you did was to say, shall we pray? Shall we pray?
And it worked.
I mean, to be fair, now I think, wow, that's amazing. But then we had to go on another date before you actually kissed me. This kiss that I'd been like waiting for since I was 12 years old. But yeah.
Who's better, me or my brother?
Well, can't possibly divulge that.
So then we got married, and pretty soon after we got married in 2004, September the 4th, we actually felt called to move to London to join HDB.
We did. And just to say, for me, I had no desire to work for a church. My parents aren't pastors. I love church. I've always been part of churches, bar that sort of blip at university. But I wanted to work in TV. I felt really cool. I felt really cool to the TV industry. I had this desire to be a TV presenter and sort of, bring Jesus into that world. And I had no inclination or desire to work in the church. Yeah. But it became clear, actually, didn't it? When we got engaged, I was still working at the BBC in London. And not only pragmatically, our lives were just becoming completely incompatible, but I felt like God was sort of... I guess turning down that desire to be in the TV world and turning up the desire to work for the church, which was a complete shock. Now, of course, I can't imagine doing anything else. But that was a very key moment. And it also meant that we could start sort of working and ministering together. Yeah.
So we then spent 10 amazing years in London. We had 4 children there.
Biological children,
You initially worked sort of in the creative department, film and all the things that were being developed there. I was worship pastor, and with Al Gordon we launched a thing called Worship Central, which is all about training and leading worship and investing in worship leaders around the world.
And Nikki and Pips invited us onto the leadership team, which I look back and think, we were what, 26, 27, maybe 27? Yeah. And, this is like Nicky Gumbel, like a once-in-a-generation leader. And he invited us to sit as part of that leadership team, which was full of incredible people.
Yeah, amazing learnings.
And that was such an honour, wasn't it? And I look back now and think, I would share I think we should do it like this. And I'm this like 27-year-old, person who's had no experience of leading church whatsoever. But actually... Nikki, I think, modelled such humble leadership, didn't he?
When we started Gas Street in about a year in, I think we both said, we need to go to Nikki and apologise.
Yes.
Because when you're not leading, everything is so clear.
Yeah, you know
and
the
you'd be
answer
like,
to everything.
Well, yeah, it's quite obvious. They
Of course
need to do
it's this way,
This
yeah.
is, this will lead to... And then, of course, when you're actually the one leading it, it's...
A lot different.
So challenging and complicated.
And he was so gracious
he
thinking
was.
about it.
But we learned a huge amount there. But I'd say it got to a point, didn't it, where we felt really unsettled.
Yeah.
I mean, everything around us was fantastic. We loved our friends, we loved the church, we loved what we were
Loved
doing.
London, yeah.
I trained to become a vicar through
We should
St.
probably share a
Mellitus.
bit about that at some point.
Yeah.
Again, that journey of
Yeah.
how we discerned.
And so we got to the point where we were, I guess I'd started to train with the understanding that at some point we'd want to lead.
And
we
I was
also-
on maternity leave at the time. I was
and
on
we
an
obviously
extended
wanted
maternity leave.
to lead together, which
Yeah.
we're going to look at how we lead together and how not to lead together.
Well, and even how we worked that out.
Yeah. And then this opportunity came for Birmingham.
Yeah.
And the Bishop of Birmingham then was a guy called David Urquhart, wanted to start a city centre resource church in Birmingham. And Nikki obviously knew that I'd grown up here, and so asked us to have a conversation with Bishop David. And I have to be honest, for me, sort of going back to Birmingham was not what was particularly exciting me. You're thinking global cities, Paris, Tokyo, New York.
Sydney. I was sort of pitching for Sydney.
Exactly. And also when you're in London, there's this, I'd say it's a lie, around, London is the epicenter of the world. And you feel the sense of pride and prestige. And, London, change London, change the world. But actually, we need amazing expressions of faith all over the UK. And so we came up to meet Bishop David, walked around Birmingham. Birmingham demographically is the youngest city in the whole of Europe. And I think we both felt, why not?
Well, it'd be worth as well saying that when we came up that day, it was like a January day, wasn't it? It was like cold and dreary.
Yep.
And it would be fair to say that Birmingham, anyone outside of the UK might not understand the nuance, that Birmingham is, even though it's the second largest city, it has a bit of a bad reputation in the UK. It's not as beautiful as London. It's not as iconic as London. It's not been seen as this sort of space of creative and cultural expression. I'm just saying that's how it was perceived.
Yeah.
Now, I really get frustrated
historically,
by that.
Birmingham was an epicenter of creative innovation industry.
And there are reasons why that sort of changed.
Lost its way a bit.
But coming to Birmingham from London, there was a sort of a sense of, really?
Yeah.
Why would you do that? Yeah. Now I should work for the Birmingham Tourist Board. I love this city.
Yeah.
I love the people. There's so much evidence of God on the move here. It is a city on the move. But we arrived here on that look round. Do you remember? It was freezing cold, dreary, grey January morning. And as we walked around the city, even though humanly speaking, everything in us should have thought, let's just quickly jump on the M40 back down to London, there was something in our spirits, both of us actually, wasn't it? They came alive. We felt this sense of God calling us. We felt a sense of the presence of God as we walked around, this sense of, what if, the possibilities, could we be part of what God is doing here in the city? And we had this sense of like this bubbling under the surface. There was something happening here that we could be a part of. And it was, I think we needed that, didn't we? We needed, because it wasn't a pragmatic move. It wasn't like a career move. Do you know what I mean? It was like it was a God move.
Yeah. And it's been amazing. We've been here 7 years. We've seen the church grow. You've launched The Orchard, a ministry empowering women. We've had the joy of working with amazing friends. We've seen people come to faith. We've planted 5 churches. We now meet.
Our
over
family
4
has
locations
grown at the same time. We've got another adopted child.
Summer, who's incredible. And so it's been an amazing time of life. As we draw this podcast, first episode,
how do you think it's gone?
Solid. I think we're finding our voice.
I think so too.
We'll stick with us.
We'll let you be the judge of that.
Yeah. But I'd love us to end, and I'll ask you, and then you can ask me.
Should I ask you?
Thing.
Okay, sure.
In terms of the last 7 years at Gas Street in Birmingham, what have you loved most, and what have you found the hardest?
I think the thing I've loved most is the stories of people finding faith in Jesus for the first time. That's the thing that never fails to move me. Even like last Sunday, there was a guy that came along to church, like dragged along by somebody who regularly comes to our church. And he was like super, super resistant for a whole bunch of reasons that were very specific. He was really resistant to coming to church, didn't want to be there, and literally cried the whole way through the service.
Was that bad?
Yeah, it was that bad. I think you were preaching. No, joking. No, in a good way.
Yeah,
you know,
okay.
he encountered the presence of God almost against his better judgment.
Yeah.
And I need to sort of find out what the rest of the story will be. But those stories never fail to move me. Never fail to, I guess, increase my sense of faith that God, you know, it's so easy to get bogged down with all the stuff, all the details. And then when you hear like almost the simplicity of someone encounters God in a way through gastry, whether it's through a Sunday gathering or through a conversation with someone or whatever, that is what it's all about. People coming to faith in Jesus for the first time, people encountering God in a profound and transformational way. And then I think probably the hardest thing is the people. That's the best bit. Like church is people, but people are messy and complicated. And I am firmly in that category myself. And leading people is the greatest joy, but also can cause the deepest grief and the greatest frustration. And I think there have been times where we've got things wrong. Yeah. We've not handled situations well. There have been times also, I think, where people haven't treated us well. And we've had to navigate that. There have been times where, you know, within our staff team, there have been struggles and difficulty. There have also been times where, you know, you look around most of the time, actually, and I pinch myself that we get to work with the people that we work with. But I think, that would be the toughest bit, is navigating some of the reality that comes with working closely with people. And I think in the context of church, rightly, people have a very high expectation, you know, that they're invested emotionally, spiritually. It's not just some social club that you show up to. You know, even people that work on our staff team, it's not just a 9 to 5. Like they're invested, and because of that, the stakes are higher, and the responsibility feels greater, and the capacity and the potential to screw it up is also greater. So what about you, darling? What about you?
Never ask. No, I think what I've loved most is the sense of adventure on a mission with friends, when you're around a kitchen table talking about, imagine if we did this, and then you step out and you see life. And I love that. Seeing a story unfold, suddenly seeing new leaders being released, seeing lives changed. And, you know, we had this moment where a whole bunch of Iranian men joined the church, and seeing that whole community grow and baptizing all these people, and, you know, Farsi community and worship songs in Farsi. I love all of that. That's been amazing. In terms of the hard thing is, I'd say myself and managing disappointment.
What do you mean by that, yourself?
Frustrated at my leadership, or is really hard, I think, and maybe this is me, maybe I'm oversharing, where you feel the fear is my leadership the big limit on all of this? And maybe there's an unhealthy sense of putting on yourself too much expectation, possibly. But also, I think this is the thing, isn't it? In church leadership, there's this massive faith gap between, ultimately it's got to be a God thing. And you step out in your weakness and your wrestles, but the danger is you think it's all on yourself. But I think I'm a dreamer. I'm an idealist. Every time I preach or lead worship, before, and I'm praying like crazy for unbelievable things to happen. Every Sunday I'm disappointed disappointed that more people didn't come to faith, disappointed that more people weren't healed, disappointed that more people didn't turn up, disappointed that the Spirit didn't move more powerfully. And I think that's part of my thing as a leader, that aspiration of more. That's, I think, one of the key things, I want to see more. It gives me the energy, the drive. But within that, there's the reality of that person didn't come back, or that friend came and hated it, or we prayed for that person to get healed and they didn't. And holding that intention, I find hard. I remember reading about this evangelist, and it's his daughter talking about this famous evangelist who, when he'd come back from church, if people hadn't come to faith, he'd have his big raincoat on and he'd lie on his bed and he'd just weep and howl, why God didn't people come, just that pain. And there's something about that story that I've really resonates with me in terms of just the disappointment. And what I've had to learn is if I live in that place too much, it's going to be very detrimental for the church, for our family, for me. And so I have to hold it lightly. Again, a bit like the start of the chaos of family life. You have to say, well, God, tomorrow's a new morning. This is the day the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. We go again. And actually, just by being faithful and keeping on going, trust that you're going to build something beautiful over weeks, months, years, decades. And that's been important. But I think that wrestle of, at times, the disappointment, or when I see what I'd love to see happen, but I don't feel I can quite get us there.
Well, it's that tension of living in the now and the not yet, isn't it? And that's something that we've been talking a lot about recently.
It's hard. Well, before we finish our first
episode,
at home
series.
with the Hugheses, but not quite at home yet.
Will be at home,
And as I said, join us. We're going to keep journeying. Next episode, we're going to look at calling. We're going to reflect on key moments along our life journey that we've learned and hopefully can be an encouragement to you. But one of the things you often say, Rach, is that the thing you find very unattractive in a man is wearing a football shirt.
That's
I have
true.
all these football shirts. I don't know, what is it you don't?
I don't know. I think it's the man-made fibres.
Okay,
It's the fit.
The other thing you often say is that I don't do romance very well. And I don't do gifts very well. And then the third thing, the English football team, the Lionesses, have been on this massive journey, haven't they? They won the Euros, sadly lost in the final of the World Cup to Spain. But I've got you a little gift.
Can I just say, it's very, very difficult for you to surprise me because I know everything.
Open it up.
But this is a genuine moment.
It is, there we go.
What have you...
See, I'm very good at doing romance when lots of people are watching.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is so
I can look great.
Convenient. If you can hear the rustling, it's an England
you got to put it on. It's the Lioness. It's not
gosh.
just the England. It's the Lionesses.
I love that. It's an
World
amazing
Cup 2023.
gift. I love that.
So you're going to have to wear it now. So
okay.
I'll tell you whether it works or not.
Okay. Oh, thanks, darling. To be fair, you are actually very...
Look at that. There you go.
Look at that. Very vocal about
if you don't
whether
want
or
it,
not
then...
you like an outfit, don't you, darling?
So there you go. England, very nice, very hot.
Can I actually wear that, do you think?
Yeah. And if not you, then our daughters would love to wear it.
Thank you, darling. That is a very thoughtful and kind gift.
Ending on a high. Well, thanks for listening.